Okay, I know this is the second consecutive revisit video I've done, but I promise there's a good reason. I'm not just redoing my entire back catalog, so stick with me here for just a minute. The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise should need no introduction. Over the past decade, it's managed to become one of the most recognizable video game series of all time, and it basically single-handedly invented mascot horror as a genre. As for myself, I grew up with FNAF, and I've been a massive fan of the series since basically day one, ravenously following each new release and piece of media as it's become available over the past 10 years. Believe it or not though, this has extended shockingly little into my personal gameplay habits. Like the vast majority of people, my knowledge of these classics comes mostly from Markiplier. Now there's nothing wrong with that, if that's what you're into, but for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to take on these titles for myself. The problem is, I've known since day one, even before I considered myself a completionist, that if I was going to dive into FNAF, I was going to have to take each entry all the way. And some of these games are ungodly hard. That's what stopped me from taking the plunge back in the day, but let's be real, I can handle difficult. That hasn't been a deal breaker pretty much since I started these videos. No, the real issue, at least recently, has been achievements. None of the classic games, the first 7, FNAF 1 through Ultimate Custom Night, have any. They were never included in their Steam releases, and I mean, that's not technically supposed to be a deal breaker for me, but look, I could never bring myself to be subjected to all those trials and tribulations when the extent of what I would get out of it would be a 3rd star on the title screen of a game that can be accidentally erased by hitting the delete key. Now, I was vaguely aware that shortly after I started my original run of videos, a number of entries in the FNAF franchise had gotten ported to various consoles, and I was even more vaguely aware that some of these releases had received achievement support. It may have even occurred to me to be a little jealous, but look, we're talking about click team games here. You play them with a mouse. Using a controller was absolutely out of the question. Such was the state of things for quite a while. That is, until I finally got my hands on an Xbox Series X. Around that time, I was of course experimenting with the new console, Game Pass trials, and importantly, the Xbox app for Windows. A lot of people probably aren't even aware of this, but Xbox has a storefront on PC. It's kind of a Steam competitor, which ordinarily would be a complete no-go for me, but if you already game on Xbox, it shares a library. Thanks to Xbox Play Anywhere, a lot of games even share save data, and notably, for the majority of titles, it's possible to earn Xbox achievements through the app on PC, which is absolutely awesome and kind of makes it a valid platform in my opinion. Anyway, I knew all of these separate facts for months before it finally clicked in my head to check, and yes, Five Nights at Freddy's is one of those games. If you buy the Xbox version, it is fully playable on PC through the Xbox app, complete with cross-platform saves, and most importantly, achievement support, which is kind of unbelievable. So yeah, I'm going to give you my official take on Five Nights at Freddy's, but first we need to talk about this port. I love the FNAF games, but it's no secret they can be a little janky to actually play. The classic Steam version has weird window scaling, it's way too easy to accidentally close with escape, and it's an absolute nightmare if you're playing with multiple monitors. The Xbox port fixes all of this though. As far as I can tell, this is the original game with no drawbacks or caveats, but you get more cooperative scaling, a pause menu, and even cheats. They disable achievements, which is good, but you've got fast nights, unlimited power, a radar camera. These are awesome for anyone who's struggling or just wants to screw around for a while. Obviously, I still think there's value in keeping the original available, but why can you not play this version on Steam? Anyway, set in 1992, most people think it's 1993, but the evidence seems to point more strongly to 92, Five Nights at Freddy's puts you in the shoes of Mike Schmidt, a minimum wage security guard hired to work the night shift at a rundown children's entertainment venue called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. During the day, it's a place of joy. But you aren't there during the day. Mike's job is pretty simple. He basically just needs to monitor security cameras and make sure nobody gets in the building. Almost as soon as you hit new game though, you'll quickly realize that the only threat to you, if any, doesn't come from outside. This game, predictably, is split up into a number of discrete nights that functionally act as levels. At the beginning of each night, you'll receive a pre-recorded message from the previous guard who worked in your office before you, a character fans have lovingly dubbed Phone Guy. These calls act as the only form of guidance you'll have throughout your journey, and they offer keen insight as to what exactly your role will be in the restaurant. You see, this establishment's primary attraction is its cast of animatronic characters designed to entertain children. Think Chuck E. Cheese when it was good. And while their main job is to be harmless and cuddly when the sun is out, the same does not apply during your shift. They're left in a sort of a free roaming mode at night, which wouldn't be a huge problem if it wasn't for the fact that, in all likelihood, were they to make their way to your office, they would likely assume you were an animatronic endoskeleton and try to forcefully stuff you into a mascot suit, resulting in dismemberment and ultimately death. Predictably, it's going to be your job to try to fend them off, but that's easier said than done. You can't move in this game, you're just kind of glued to your seat, so the only tools at your disposal are your doors, your lights, and your cameras. Now, you might think you'd just be able to close your doors, but unfortunately, everything you do in this game uses power, which is in limited supply. Running out of power will result in a blackout, which is an almost guaranteed death depending on when it happens. With that in mind then, the new gameplay loop should look something like this. Check your cameras to track the animatronic's movement, use your door lights if necessary to see if there's anyone nearby, and if it comes to it, seal off a door. Pretty simple, right? Well, before I issue a ruling on that, I think we should probably familiarize ourselves with the animatronics. The cast of this game is comprised of some of the most recognizable characters of all time, but if by some miracle you aren't already aware, your goal is to protect yourself from Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, Foxy the Pirate Fox, and of course, the titular Freddy Fazbear. Each character behaves differently, and as such needs to be treated differently if you want to fend them off. Bonnie, for example, will progress through the restaurant until he arrives at your left door, at which point he'll hide in the blind spot only visible to your light. Once he's there, you'll need to close the door in order to get him to leave, or else. Chica behaves identically to Bonnie, except she approaches from the right door, so she can be handled in pretty much the same way. Foxy, on the other hand, is an entirely different beast. He's sequestered away in the out-of-order Pirate's Cove, but he'll progressively make his way out from behind the curtains if you keep your eyes off of him for too long. Once he makes it off stage, he'll bolt down the left hall towards your office, and without lightning fast reflexes to close the left door, you're guaranteed dead. Finally, Freddy, predictably, is the most threatening of all. He moves towards your right door, like Chica, but he never moves backwards, and never appears in the doorway. Instead, if he makes it to your office, he'll just come on inside and wait before eventually killing you. The only real way to combat him is to view whatever camera he happens to be on, which can keep him from moving, and hope this stalls him long enough for you to survive the night. Your shift ends at 6 AM, but the nights in this game are like the longest in the franchise, so you need to fend these guys off for a whole 9 minutes if you want to see your family again. The night system sets up a really good progression though, as each subsequent night in effect introduces a new character you need to keep track of, starting with Bonnie, then Chica, then Foxy, and finally Freddy. While the phone guy gives you useful hints, he obviously doesn't just come out and explain any of these mechanics to you, and the rate at which new threats are added just slightly outpaces your ability to come to grips with them, so there's always a feeling of panic and confusion as the difficulty progresses. The atmosphere of this game is phenomenal. The restaurant appears to be in disrepair. It's dingy, and with the lights out, it's obviously dark. The cameras are low quality, so you have to study each one closely to figure out if there's something lurking in the shadows. Your office is pretty wide open, with doors on each side, and it doesn't take long for you to realize just how uncomfortably close the animatronics get to you when they're passing by. Throughout your playthrough, you'll suffer persistent visual and auditory hallucinations, adding to an ever-increasing paranoia. And even the sound design for things like flipping up your monitor or operating your lights are harsh and unwelcoming, allowing you to take little comfort in the things that are supposed to keep you safe. With theming executed this flawlessly, it's no wonder this game caught on as quickly as it did. It does an incredible job of making the player progressively more tense, perfectly priming them for the moment. None of this would matter all that much though if things didn't hold up on the gameplay end, and thankfully, for the most part, they do. Assuming you're a new player. If you're going into this game blind, which to be fair is typically the expectation for a horror title, the increasing of both difficulty and complexity will probably feel just about right, and you'll have a reasonably challenging and satisfactorily spooky time making your way through the week. The only criticism I could possibly offer of FNAF 1, if you could even consider this a criticism, is that for anybody more familiar with the mechanics, this is essentially a solved game. By this I mean, at this point we understand exactly how the game functions, and as such, understand that there is an objectively optimal way to play every single time. For instance, there's not actually any reason to track Bonnie or Chica on the cameras. You can't do anything to them until they're already at your door, and checking the cameras won't even tell you that, so monitoring your lights and closing doors when appropriate will render them a complete non-issue. Additionally, Foxy doesn't actually require you to watch his camera specifically, just that you put up the monitor occasionally, so there's no reason to ever flip over to Pirate's Cove. With all this in mind, all you ever actually have to do is flip up the camera to stall Freddy, flash each door light for Bonnie and Chica, and close doors when necessary. Guaranteed win every time. This obviously means subsequent playthroughs can be kind of underwhelming. I mean, it's not like a skilled player can beat the nights any faster, so once you realize that you can beat the first 2 nights by closing the left door and walking away from your computer, you're kind of left to make your own fun, I guess. So, what exactly is going on in this game anyway? Well, anyone even tangentially familiar with this franchise should understand that that's a loaded question, but I'll do my best to break it down here anyway. Alright, so if you pay close attention, you should occasionally be able to spot newspaper clippings appearing on the walls of the restaurant. Together, these clippings tell the story of 5 children who all went missing sometime in the past. It was later discovered that all 5 children had been lured into the back room of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location by a man wearing a mascot costume who had used it to gain their trust. The man was swiftly arrested, and the children presumed dead, but since no bodies were ever discovered, the charges didn't stick. Years later, the pizzeria was finally shut down due to low patronage, and notably, health concerns, with the animatronic characters exhibiting foul odors and appearing to ooze blood and mucus from the eyes and mouths of their masks. Basically, bro murdered a bunch of kids and stuffed their bodies in the suits. Now they're haunted. Other than Phone Guy dying in Night 4, this is basically all of the story we're told in the first game. And looking back, I was pretty surprised by how self-contained it all was. I mean, this basically tells you all you need to know in a pretty straightforward manner, which is interesting considering how insane the lore of these games would go on to become. For example, with the benefit of later entries, I'm able to tell you that the killer's name was William Afton, the proverbial man behind the slaughter. And, more relevant to this game, that you don't actually play as Mike Schmidt, but rather William's son, Michael Afton. You know.
Father, it's me, Michael.
That guy. From a lore perspective, FNAF 1 was just one of Michael's many stops on his little apology tour trying to free the souls of the impressively large number of children his dad murdered. It's also worth noting that during the events of this game, depending on your opinion of where Sister Location falls on the timeline, Michael may or may not have been a reanimated, disemboweled, rotting corpse with purple skin, which would explain why at the end of this game you get fired with one of the stated reasons being odor. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though. That doesn't happen until way later. For now, we need to talk about what happens after Night 5. It's Night 6, I don't really know what you expected. Yeah, and what would start a long-standing tradition for the franchise, completing Night 5 unlocks a bonus night, allowing you to really put your skills to the test on a slightly less forgiving stage. Ultimately though, it doesn't introduce any new mechanics, so it should be pretty straightforward to plow your way through and finally make it to the very last challenge, Night 7. The infamous Custom Night. This mode is actually really cool when you think about it. It allows you to directly modify the animatronics' AI values and as such increase or decrease their aggressiveness. This, in turn, allows you to do some pretty cool things, like explore the restaurant risk-free, or set Freddy to 20 and Bonnie and Chica to 0 so you can laugh at him being stuck behind them on stage. We all know what this mode is really used for though. By setting every character's AI value to the highest possible number, you can begin FNAF 1's ultimate challenge, known colloquially as 420 mode. Now, if I really wanted to gas myself up here, I could start yapping about how there wasn't even originally a reward for beating this night because the developer assumed it was impossible. Or I could show you a clip of Markiplier screaming after spending 8 hours straight trying to finish it for the first time. Something like that. Being the humble guy I am though, I'll keep it real with you. It's actually not that bad. Don't get me wrong, this is an insanely difficult night, but it's nothing compared to the max modes and later entries, and you won't have to learn anything new as compared to how you beat Night 6. You need to be insanely quick when it comes to checking the lights and cameras, and maintaining that pace for a full 9 minutes is definitely not trivial, but if you can, it's basically a guaranteed win. I actually think this is a really suitable jumping on point for anybody looking to get into FNAF challenges. It's going to be really intimidating at first, but if you stick with it, you'll have it finished before you know it. It's a good mindset to develop as you head into the actually insane modes you'll encounter later in the franchise. With 420 mode complete, you should be up to 3 stars on your title screen, and with that, you have 100% completed Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, so technically there are 2 non-progression related achievements you need to do in Nights 4 and 5, but they're really easy. I don't even know why they were included. I got them both on my first try. I had a really good time with my most recent playthrough of FNAF. In all honesty, this game hasn't aged a day. It's still just as endearing and delightfully spooky as it was at release over a decade ago. I know that for a lot of people, horror games, and FNAF games in particular, are better watched than played, and hey, if that's your predilection, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you've ever been on the fence about giving this one a go, I would highly recommend it. It's a great onboarding point for the franchise. It's just a shame that what is, in my opinion, the best version of this title isn't available on Steam. I certainly had to jump through some hoops to get it there, but I'm delighted to finally have this on my list of 100% completed games. Now come back next time and see if I survive FNAF 2. This only took like a year to make, so if you didn't enjoy it, it's fine. I won't cry. This time. If by some miracle you did actually like it though, how about showing your support by dropping a fat thumbs up and getting subscribed so you don't miss when this series gets really interesting. And hey, if you're really gung-ho about it, what I would particularly appreciate is your leaving a comment letting me know what you think. This one is really an open book, so go crazy with it. Have you ever played FNAF yourself? Which is your favorite game? What did you think about the movie? I would love to hear from you. Finally, if you have any interest at all, why not follow me on social media? I post on TikTok now, so you can find all that along with any of the music that I used in this video in the description as always. Alright, I think that's all I have for you today. I need to get working on 1020 mode, so for now, thanks for watching.